Hello, namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Friday is when blockbusters come out, and last Friday we got one from the White House. A shouting match between Donald Trump and his guests/US ally, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. The clash ended with him being kicked out of the White House. But Zelensky has not given up. He says he is open to visiting the White House again and signing the mineral deal. What has led to this U-turn? And is it too late for him? We'll discuss that tonight. And what does this mean for Vladimir Putin? How will it reshape our world order? We'll discuss all of that also on the show. Top Iranian officials have been fired amid an economic downturn. In Afghanistan, Donald Trump has stirred trouble over the Bagram air base. In India, health insurance prices are rising. We'll tell you why. What is India's Project Lion? And finally, some advice for our leaders ahead of Women's Day. Focus on policy, not tokenism. All this and more lined up. First, the headlines. Another car ramming attack in Germany. A driver crashes into a crowd in a city in the southwest of the country. At least one person has been killed and several injured in the incident. A suspect has been arrested. In recent months, Germany has seen a spate of violent attacks. One person killed and many injured in an attack in Israel as well. The incident took place at a bus station in Haifa where an attacker stabbed several people. This was the first fatal attack in Israel since the Gaza ceasefire on the 19th of January. Negotiations to extend the truce have now stalled. Myanmar's junta chief heads to Russia to meet Vladimir Putin. Moscow is a key ally and arms supplier for the isolated state, which is struggling to quell the opposition to its military rule. In 2021, the junta seized power in a coup. Since 2023, it has suffered significant territorial losses after a rebel offensive. Lebanon's president arrives in Saudi Arabia. This is his first trip abroad since taking office earlier this year, which ended a more than a 2-year-long power vacuum in the country. The Lebanese president is said to enjoy Riyadh and Washington support. And Indian cricketer Rishabh Pant nominated for the Laureus World Sports Award. It's in the comeback of the year category. Pant returned to the Indian team in 2024 after surviving a car accident in 2022. He is only the second Indian cricketer to be nominated for this award after Sachin Tendulkar.
Cars. Right now, you're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. Stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment.
Have you seen a car crash live? People think it's all fast and loud, but in reality, there is a lull before the bang. Things appear to move in slow motion. And we saw that on Friday at the White House, when President Donald Trump clashed with Volodymyr Zelensky. If you're on the internet, you know what happened. And we will dissect it and discuss who's at fault. But first, let's tell you about what followed. After the clash at the White House, Zelensky flew to London. He met UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer there. He also attended a European summit on Ukraine. And there, Zelensky made a U-turn. He now says he is ready to return to the White House. Let me repeat that. Zelensky wants to go back to the White House. He wants to sign the minerals deal, the same one that he walked out of. Listen to this.
If we agreed that the minerals deal with US will be signed, from our side we are ready to sign. If the President of the United States of America will invite me for a constructive dialogue, for solving real problems, for serious questions and real resolute actions and answers, I will be there, out of respect for America, American people, the President, and the two parties.
So Zelensky wants a redo, Unfortunately, this is not GTA Vice City. You don't get multiple shots at the same mission. And Zelenskyy's mission was quite clear. This is what he had to do: sign the minerals deal, smile for the cameras, praise Donald Trump in public, make his case in private, and then fly to London. This was his task. But as you may have seen, that's not what happened. The meeting descended into chaos. Take a look.
We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean. And don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you can...
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
After every fight comes the obvious question: who started it? In this case, the opinion is divided. Trump's critics say that the president's team was combative. In fact, a pro-Trump reporter was in the room with the leaders. Listen to what he asked Zelensky.
Do you ever, why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if you, do you own a suit?
Yeah, you have problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting
I don't have such.
office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something like
yours. Yes. Maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than Thank you. Thank you.
Well, criticizing a leader is one thing, but questioning his choice of clothes, that's a low blow. And what is this obsession with a suit? The Gulf monarchs do not wear a suit. Many South Asian leaders do not wear a suit. Does that disqualify them from meeting the US president? It's not the clothes that matter, it's your actions and words. So it wasn't a very friendly setting to start with. And Zelensky did not help his case. He made a bad situation worse. He let his emotions get the better of him. He put his ego above the interests of his country. Just think about it. Ukraine is just a small part of Donald Trump's agenda. If he cannot strike this deal, fine. America won't be turned upside down. But it's not the same for Ukraine. Zelensky needed Trump to keep fighting Russia. Just look at the numbers. American military aid to Ukraine is $65 billion. $65 billion. European aid is $51 billion. That's $51 billion by more than 27 European countries. So if Donald Trump leaves, it's game over for Ukraine. Europe alone cannot arm or protect Ukraine. The fact is the Europeans themselves depend on the US for security. So how can they protect someone else? Donald Trump knows this. His arrogance and his aggression came from that knowledge. Zelensky should have known it too. And he should have handled it better. After all, he is the party in need, not Trump, not Europe. It is Ukraine that needs support, and Zelensky's words and actions showed a certain lack of experience. He became president in 2019. He spent 3 years of his tenure fighting a war. Wherever he went, he was cheered. The US media compared him to Winston Churchill. But after Trump's win, the sentiment changed. The US president called him a dictator. The US media questioned his wardrobe, and US politicians asked him to resign. A seasoned leader might have weathered the storm, but Volodymyr Zelensky could not. He gave in to his ego and impulses, and we've seen other world leaders do better, handle such situations better. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer was in the White House before Zelensky. JD Vance attacked him too. But Starmer did not fight back. He just gave a casual clarification with a smile. Same with French President Emmanuel Macron. He visited the White House before Starmer, and he fact-checked the US president. Again, not in a combative way. He did so with a friendly tap on Trump's hand. So my point is quite simple. Words and gestures matter, especially when you deal with someone like Donald Trump. Zelensky blew it up. And now he wants another invite. After leaving the White House, he landed in London. European leaders had gathered there, hosted by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And Starmer pitched a 4-point plan. Number 1, keep arming Ukraine, keep sanctioning Russia. Number 2, ensure Kiev is present at peace talks. Number 3, create deterrence for Ukraine after a peace deal. And number 4, build a coalition of the willing to guarantee Ukraine's security. This is what Keir Starmer has proposed. He says any deal should be backed by strength.
Any deal must be backed by strength. Every nation must contribute to that in the best way that it can, bringing different capabilities and support to the table, but all taking responsibility to act, all stepping up their own share of the burden.
The French also have a proposal. They have called for a 1-month truce in Ukraine. The fighting on the ground will continue, they say, but fighting in the air, in the sea, and around energy infrastructure will end. Paris is basically testing the waters. They want to see if Vladimir Putin will take up the offer, if he's serious about a peace deal. But forget Putin. France's own allies are unsure about it. Britain says they're yet to agree to this idea. Meanwhile, the rest of Europe is pitching in, not with proposals or weapons, but with empty words of support. Dozens of leaders have expressed solidarity with Ukraine, and Zelensky has been thanking each one of them on Twitter, or X as they call it now. You could call it the JD Vance effect. But words will not repel bullets. As a wartime leader, Zelensky should know that. He may get respect in Europe, but Europeans cannot ensure his country's security. Their leaders have been open about that. They say the US will have to give security guarantees. The man who can do that is US President Donald Trump. But after Friday's horror show, who knows? A lot of Trump's allies are asking Zelensky to resign. They want a fresh face to reset ties. We don't know if that will happen. Either way, Friday was not a good look for Zelensky or for Trump. The only winner was Vladimir Putin.
You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards.
Wait a
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Stupid president. Country is in big trouble.
I know.
First contacts with the new U.S. administration give certain hopes. There is mutual determination to work restoration of relations between two countries.
So Zelensky and his team are in disarray. Trump has fully embraced Russia, and Europe is scrambling to respond. The Western alliance is unraveling, and Russia is watching all of it with satisfaction. Vladimir Putin is planning his next moves. Amid this chaos, he wants to maximize his gains, first by playing to Trump's ego. Just like Washington, Moscow has blamed Zelensky for the fiasco on Friday. Russia says Ukraine is the one rejecting peace. Now, we know that Russia and the US are holding direct talks. If they reach a peace deal, the US and Russia, can they force Ukraine to accept it? Moscow is not so sure. It believes a direct deal between Russia and the US won't be enough to end the war.
The Kiev regime and Zelensky do not want peace. They want the war to continue. So in this situation, of course, only Washington's efforts and Moscow's willingness will clearly not be enough.
That's a significant statement from Russia. Putin holds the upper hand. The Russians feel victory is close, but it is not a done deal. Perhaps that's why Putin is playing hardball. Ever since Trump extended a hand of friendship, the Russian president has held his cards close to his chest. Like when Trump spoke with Putin, he claimed that they had reached an agreement. Trump said they had agreed to begin ceasefire talks. But Putin told a different story.
During the phone conversation and at the meeting in Riyadh, we certainly touched on issues related to the Ukrainian crisis. However, it was not discussed in essence. We only agreed that we would approach it.
So Trump says we are talking peace, but Putin says we've only agreed to discuss it. He knows that Trump wants a deal, and Trump wants it quickly. But Putin has proven to be the master of strategic patience. After the clash at the White House, he has spelled out more demands. Russia now wants the US to contain Europe first.
As for peacekeepers, they say, we are preparing so many thousands of peacekeepers, and we will provide peacekeepers with air cover. This is also impudent. Firstly, no one asks us, and Trump understands everything. He said that it is too early to say when there will be a settlement. You can discuss this issue, but the consent of the parties will be needed.
That was Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister. He was referring to the European leaders, those who want to secure Ukraine by sending their own troops or peacekeepers. Earlier, Donald Trump had declared that Russia won't object to this, that Moscow will be fine with European troops in Ukraine. But clearly, Russia has a problem with that. Lavrov says they won't allow it. And that's not the only point of difference. The US and Russia also have different priorities when it comes to a peace deal. Trump wants a quick ceasefire. In his own words, he wants to, quote-unquote, stop the death. But Putin wants a wider deal, a deal that addresses the, quote-unquote, root causes of the war. In other words, a deal that addresses issues like Ukraine's NATO membership or NATO-like security guarantees for Kiev, pushing NATO out of Eastern Europe. This includes both the physical troop presence and NATO military assets in the region. Russia also wants to limit the size of Ukraine's military. Putin wants a deal which covers all of these demands. And that means there won't be a quick agreement because this negotiation on all of these points could take months. And the US cannot do it alone. Even if Trump offers Putin the best terms, he cannot give unilateral guarantees on all these issues. He will have to involve Europe. At least that is Putin's calculation. He wants what he calls a fundamental solution to the Ukraine crisis.
It was they who made the start of serious dialogue possible with their heroism and daily victories. The dialogue about fundamental solution of Ukrainian and other crises, including, we also talk about it and we never rejected it, peaceful solutions.
A fundamental solution, not a quick fix. That's what Vladimir Putin wants. He's in a strong position to raise such sweeping demands. He has managed to achieve some of the core objectives behind starting this war in Ukraine. Putin has weakened Kiev, both politically and diplomatically. He has managed to deepen the divisions in the West. And now he's dictating the terms and the pace of the peace talks. The pressure is on Donald Trump, the American president. He has to live up to his reputation of a deal maker. Putin won't make it easy for him. Russia's intentions are quite clear. Putin doesn't just want a deal, he wants to make the West pay a price for it.
He's all dressed up today. Is that you, right? Stupid president, you're gambling with World War III.
You will feel it.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
The Ukraine war has always been a stage for high-stakes geopolitics, but never has the script been so unpredictable or the cast so powerful. Every key player has their own motives, their own lines to deliver, and their own audience to impress. Some see themselves as heroes, some as master negotiators, and some are simply reveling in the chaos. So who are the power players in this unfolding drama? Let's start with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. 3 years ago, Zelensky became a wartime leader. The Western press glorified him. They called him the picture of resilience. He was the David standing in front of Russia's Goliath. But not anymore. It's been more than 1,100 days of this war, many rounds of diplomatic pleading, and no end to the fighting. Zelensky's frustration is beginning to show. It was on display at the Oval Office on Friday. You see, Zelensky may have been an actor, but I'm sure even he was not ready for this kind of drama. 1 minute, he's the poster child for Western resolve, and the next, he's being ghosted by his strongest ally. He went to Washington to sign a minerals deal. He was subjected to third-degree treatment and thrown out. He went there to secure Trump's support. He left with Washington calling for his resignation. And then he landed in London into the warm embrace of UK's Keir Starmer, both literally and politically. Yet beneath all the smiles and handshakes, Zelensky knows something. Europe may love him, but it won't buy him missiles. So he's back to wooing the US like a jilted lover trying to patch up.
I believe that Ukraine has a strong enough partnership with the United States of America. From the very beginning of a full-scale invasion, they were probably the strongest partner, because before that there was probably no such level of support from the United States, before the beginning of the full-scale invasion.
Zelensky built his career on quick wit and adaptability. But right now he seems lost, fumbling his gains one day at a time and failing to impress US President Donald Trump. Who is our second key player in focus, Donald Trump? He's prided himself on being the unscripted showman. But even by Trump's standards, the Oval Office meeting was chaotic. Because for the former reality TV star, diplomacy is just another ratings game. And Ukraine is no longer a top-tier contestant. The meeting with Zelensky should have been simple, sign a deal and reaffirm US support. But it turned into a public scolding session. Trump's grievances are many. He's accused Zelensky of ingratitude, of failing to make concessions and being the instigator of the war. So when Zelensky was shown the door, the new equation became clear. For Trump, Ukraine is not a noble cause. It's a mere business transaction that's gone wrong. And now he's done extending the loan. Player number 3 is Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK. He's had a good weekend. He hosted an emergency summit on Ukraine. He managed to get all of Europe together, which is quite impressive for a man who was dismissed as too stiff and methodical. He's somehow become an unexpected statesman.
Be taking this step down this road if I didn't think that it was something that would yield a positive outcome in terms of ensuring that we move together, Ukraine, Europe, the UK and the US, together towards a lasting peace.
Britain is now one of Kiev's most vocal supporters. Keir Starmer has embraced this role with a newfound confidence. It's like the quiet character in a movie that gets the biggest plot twist.
The UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air, together with others. Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing.
Starmer built his career on meticulous legal arguments. Churchillian rhetoric is not his cup of tea. So this is a striking transformation. But while Keir Starmer is stepping into a new role, he may be stealing someone else's spotlight. I'm talking about French President Emmanuel Macron, who fancies himself a great statesman, a 21st century Charles de Gaulle, if you will. Unfortunately, reality does not align with his grand vision. We told you about his latest proposal. President Macron suggested a month-long truce, but the UK was not so keen. Macron is undeterred, though. He is determined to position himself as Europe's de facto leader.
Ukraine is indeed a fight for us. It is important for international law, for sovereignty, and it is also the fight for the security of Europeans. It is existential for us, and it is important that President Zelensky can explain to President Trump what is at stake at home.
These words may work in the salons of Paris, but right now he's losing ground to Keir Starmer, which brings us to the last and the most crucial player, Vladimir Putin, the Russian president. He does not need to make speeches or propose grand peace deals, because why bother when your enemies are doing all the work? The West is busy arguing, posturing, and repositioning themselves. So all Putin has to do is wait. The US and Russia have completed 2 rounds of talks. Washington is already discussing Ukrainian concessions. Then came the Oval Office fiasco, the cherry on top. Putin's playing the long game, and the chaos in the West is playing right into his hands. If this were chess, Putin is the only one thinking 5 moves ahead. But will he get everything he wants? Because this war is not just about territory, it's also a battle of wills, egos, and political survival. In the end, whose script will dictate the final act? The world has no choice but to wait and watch. Let's zoom out of Ukraine now, because these changes don't just affect one country, they're reshaping our world. Let's start with a short history lesson. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. Until then, our world order was bipolar in nature. You had 2 powers carving up the world. You had the US and the USSR, or the Soviet Union. After 1991, only one of them remained, the United States. We entered the era of unipolarity. The Americans did virtually whatever they wanted. They bombed Yugoslavia, they invaded and occupied Iraq, they invaded and occupied Afghanistan, and they reshaped global institutions. You could question the Americans, but you could not stop them. Now, even that order is changing. Under Donald Trump, the US is losing interest in the world. Its allies are becoming rivals. Its long-term enemies are becoming partners, and those on the sidelines are confused. They're not sure what this emerging order really stands for. Is it multipolar? Does it even have any poles? And if so, who are they? What are these poles? Let's look at the changes in America first. Donald Trump has already withdrawn from multiple global agencies, like the World Health Organization, the Paris Climate Accords, and the UN Human Rights Agency. He's pulled out of all of these, but he's not done yet. Trump's allies are pitching an even bigger walkout. They want him to pull out of the United Nations and NATO. They want America to pull out of the UN and NATO, and guess who supports this idea? Trump's first buddy, Elon Musk. Musk agrees that America must pull out of NATO and the UN, which raises 2 questions. 1, can he do that? And 2, what would be the fallout? On NATO, it's quite clear. US laws require 2/3 congressional majority to leave NATO, but some experts say this law is not airtight, meaning Donald Trump can leave if he wants to. But chances are he will be challenged in court. On the United Nations, leaving is not an option. The United Nations Charter was not designed for countries to exit. If you violate it, you can be expelled. But leaving is not in the bylaws. Of course, Trump could simply stop showing up, basically not send officials or envoys to any UN agency or meeting. Which brings us to the second question. What would be the impact of all of this? NATO would almost immediately become useless. America's military budget is more than double of all other NATO allies combined. So no America equals no NATO. Vladimir Putin would absolutely love that. He's been opposing NATO expansion for years. As for the United Nations, China will be more happy than Russia. They have consistently tried to hijack UN agencies and laws. If America is out, it makes China's job easier. Now for the big picture. What sort of world order is this? It is increasingly looking multipolar, a world which has different centers of power. So this is what it looks like. You'll have a China and India in Asia, a Russia or France in Europe, and a United States in the Western Hemisphere. Ukraine is the best example of this emerging order. The Americans opposed Russia's invasion for 3 years, yet Putin did not stop. And that clearly shows that it's not unipolar anymore. America's power is not absolute. You had Israel ignoring former President Joe Biden, China openly encircling Taiwan, and of course Russia continuing its war in Ukraine. All of this confirms America's weakness. You now have players able and willing to challenge the Americans. In Europe, this could create new equations. The European Union is already boosting their military spending. They're looking beyond America for defense. Meanwhile, US and Russian interests are aligning. They're talking about arms control policies. They're discussing Arctic cooperation. The question is, will this last beyond the Trump presidency, or will it revert to default after it? Either way, the impact could be massive because Donald Trump will be in office until 2029. In Asia, too, this will create complications. If Trump won't defend NATO, will he defend Taiwan, or the Philippines, or Japan, or South Korea? Chances are he won't. So those countries must also explore options. Either create new alliances or find new partners or build their own defenses. And yes, this could be as chaotic as it sounds. Regional bullies could settle their scores on the battlefield. Smaller states could end up being swallowed up. It's less of order and more of a new world disorder. But that's the law of the jungle. When the king dies, the power struggle begins. Though in this case, the king is alive. He's still more powerful than others in the jungle, but he's weaker than before and far less interested. If you're tracking these changes, it's an exciting time to be alive, but if you're on the front line, less so. Our next story is about cryptocurrencies. Donald Trump shook the market yesterday. He said that the US will move forward on a crypto strategic reserve. Think of it like a crypto hoard, like Fort Knox is for gold. Trump says the US will go ahead in setting up one. They will set up a crypto reserve. It isn't here yet. He was just reiterating an old promise. It was just talk. But when it's Donald Trump saying it, that's obviously going to move markets. And it did. Trump mentioned 5 cryptocurrencies that he wants in this reserve, and all their prices surged. People started buying them up. The gains did come down a few hours later, but it shows just how easily Trump can manipulate the crypto markets. Our next report has the details.
Donald Trump put out 2 social media posts yesterday. These 2. In the first one, Trump talks about an old executive order, one that he signed on the 23rd of January. Trump reiterated what this month-old order did. He said he had told his officials to move forward on a crypto strategic reserve. So that part wasn't really news. He didn't unveil any new reserve. He was just hyping it up. The new information was about what could go into the reserve when it eventually comes into existence. Trump first mentioned 3 cryptocurrencies: XRP, Solana, and Cardano. He said XRP, SOL, and ADA. Those are the trading names. When Trump mentioned this, the currency saw a spike in value. People rushed to buy them. At one point, XRP rose by 37%, Solana by 26%, and Cardano by a whopping 71%. Why? Because of hype. And the prospect of these cryptocurrencies becoming rarer. After all, if the US government starts hoarding them, there will be less in the market. So the scarcity logic drove up their prices. Think about the toilet paper rush in the early days of COVID. Except you can actually put the toilet paper to use. Trump's second social media post came about 2 hours later. There, he gave a shout out to the bigger cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Both ended up making gains as well, before market forces took over. As ever, cryptocurrencies are volatile things to buy. Their inherent worth is determined by demand and supply, a bit like stocks. But crypto doesn't pay out dividends, and it isn't dependent on a company's performance, or anything tangible like annual profits. Crypto is just all about speculation. Crypto's volatility makes it risky. Today, Trump can say he's putting XRP in a coming soon crypto reserve. The crypto reserve could get stalled by red tape for years, causing the value to crash over time. Or tomorrow, Trump might change his mind about XRP, causing the cryptocurrency to crash immediately. That probably won't happen though. XRP spent millions during the November elections, so they might get their reward. Trump's soon-to-come crypto reserve and its components will be based on recommendations by his Working Group on Digital Asset Markets. This was formed on January 23rd. They had 180 days to submit their report, so we won't really know what they recommend till July 22nd. Until then, Trump can hype up any cryptocurrency he wants. What if he buys some random cryptocurrency? Let's imagine he buys something called Bullcoin. Let's say Trump buys $10 worth of it and then starts hyping it up, saying he'll add Bullcoin to the coming soon, almost here US crypto reserve. Trump could basically cause the Bullcoin to surge in value just because of hype. Then, just a day before his working group's report, he could sell off his Bullcoins, potentially minting millions, even if the Bullcoin doesn't actually make it into the reserve. This is just an example to highlight the volatility of cryptocurrencies. It's a risky bet, with the potential for big payout or massive life-crushing losses. A US crypto reserve would be funded by US taxpayer money. Tax revenue would be used to buy crypto, basically allowing Trump to run the biggest casino in the world. For the sake of all mom-and-pop investors, let's hope it turns out better than his last casino venture.
Our next story is about Iran. There's a churn taking place in Tehran's corridors of power. On Saturday, Iran's finance minister was fired. He was impeached by their parliament. Then yesterday, there was a second ouster. Iran's vice president for strategic affairs tendered his resignation. The VP was Mohammad Javad Zarif. He's a former foreign minister, the one who helped finalize the 2015 Iran nuclear deal between Tehran and the West. So he was someone well known to Western nations, someone who had worked with them before. Now he has been ousted along with Iran's finance minister. And this is quite significant because while these ousters may seem like local Iranian politics, they have wider implications for the world. You see, both the ousted men were reformists. They were people trying to renew Iran's ties with the West and find a way out of the never-ending sanctions. They were handpicked by Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Pezeshkian won Iran's presidential election last July on a moderate platform. He had proposed working with the West, possibly on another nuclear deal, to get them to ease sanctions. Now, this rhetoric was part of the reason why Pezeshkian was elected. So after he won, he set up his team accordingly, including the two people who were fired this weekend. The first target, Iran's finance minister, was ousted by parliament. Iran's parliament is full of Pezeshkian's opponents, hardliners. They don't want Iran to improve ties with the West. So they targeted the finance minister over the worsening state of the economy. And it wasn't a bad excuse. Iran's currency has crumbled. $1 US was worth 950,000 riyals. A dollar was about 600,000 riyals when Pezeshkian took office in July. So the currency is falling, and this has contributed to inflation, which is rampant in Iran. Inflation stands at about 35%. But inflation is not a new problem for them. It's been a problem for years. What's new is how Iran's hardliners have weaponized it to undermine the president's government. The president tried to defend his man by pointing at the real problem.
We are in a full-scale war with the enemy. We must take a war formation, and in this situation, blaming each other will not solve the problem.
Pezeshkian was urging unity against the enemy. That means the US. Because even though he wants to work with the West, he doesn't consider them friends, especially US President Donald Trump. Days after taking office, Trump brought back his maximum pressure policy. He doubled down on the sanctions, causing the Iranian economy to spiral further. It knocked the wind out of Iran's sails, derailing any chance of rapprochement.
I believed it's better to talk to the US, but the Supreme Leader said we will not talk with America. So I announced we will not talk with America.
So Donald Trump's actions angered Iran's Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and Khamenei told Pezeshkian not to talk to the US. The reformist president's entire agenda was undermined and his hardliner opponents were emboldened. Iran's hardliners are now circling Pezeshkian like a pack of hyenas, picking off his allies one by one. First, it was the finance minister, then yesterday it was the former diplomat. Iranian reformists believe that more impeachments will follow, setting the stage for a hardliner takeover. Now let's talk about Afghanistan, a war-torn nation now caught in a great power struggle again. Donald Trump has renewed his interest in Afghanistan. In his last term, he had initiated the US troop withdrawal from there, and he ended the 20-year-long war in Afghanistan. But now Trump wants back in. And the reason for that is China. President Donald Trump claims the PLA, the Chinese army, is expanding its presence. He says Chinese troops are now at the Bagram Air Base. Remember, this was America's biggest military facility in Afghanistan. Now they say the Chinese have taken over. The Taliban has rejected this claim, but Trump is not backing down. He has declared that he wants to bring American military equipment back from Afghanistan. He wants it back, the same weapons that Washington had donated to the government it supported in Kabul, the old government. Now those weapons are with the Taliban, and they have refused to return them. It's unclear how Trump will execute his plans, how he will bring back the weapons. But one thing is quite clear. The regime in Kabul is deepening ties with Beijing. Here's how.
It is a claim which has rattled observers. Donald Trump believes that China's military is making deep inroads in Afghanistan.
We're going to get out, but we're going to keep Bagram, not because of Afghanistan, but because of China, because it's exactly 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear missiles. And you know who's occupying it right now? China. Biden gave it up.
The US president is talking about this facility, the Bagram Air Base. It used to be America's biggest military base in Afghanistan, the linchpin for all major US operations in the country. Today, the Taliban control it, and for the moment, they plan to keep it. The Taliban were quick to dismiss President Trump's claims. They said they have no pact with China, and at the moment, no Chinese troops are present there. But Trump's concerns are not baseless. A few years ago, a story had emerged that claimed the PLA wanted to make a move in Afghanistan. The Chinese military had ordered a feasibility study. This was to figure out the impact of sending Chinese soldiers, workers and other staff to Bagram. Why did China show interest in this base? It was because of the Belt and Road Initiative, which is Xi Jinping's flagship investment project. The logic was simple. If China invests in Afghanistan, Bagram would help in protecting Chinese interests. No one knows the outcome of this study, and Beijing was swift to deny the story. But it's difficult to dismiss China's growing influence in Afghanistan. Top officials from China and the Taliban now meet frequently. They have signed mineral deals together, and there's talk of upgrading transportation routes between Afghanistan and China. Last year, Beijing opened doors for the Taliban to access key areas of its economy. It offered tariff-free trade in construction, energy and consumer goods.
As one of the least developed countries recognized by the United Nations, Afghanistan also enjoys the above-mentioned preferential policies. We believe that this will be conducive to promoting mutually beneficial and win-win economic and trade cooperation between China and Arab countries.
The writing is on the wall. China's influence in Afghanistan is growing, and President Trump wants to counter it. A new great power struggle could be brewing in war-torn Afghanistan. And once again, the Afghans are vulnerable.
Every year, 10 crore people in India are pushed into poverty. 10 crore people. Do you know why? Because of medical bills. One medical emergency in the family and they're bankrupt. Tells you a lot about our healthcare system. We are a country of 1.4 billion people. We have a booming healthcare industry. In 2023, it was worth $372 billion. This year, it could cross $638 billion. That's the projection, $638 billion. Meanwhile, the costs are skyrocketing. For a lot of people, even basic medical procedures are becoming unaffordable. Like angioplasty, a minimally invasive heart procedure. In 2018, it cost between 1 and 1.15 lakh rupees. Now it is around 2 to 3 lakh rupees. Or kidney transplants, which cost 5 to 8 lakh rupees in 2018, but 10 to 15 lakh rupees now. All of this is because of medical inflation in India. In 2024, it hit 14%, which is the highest in Asia, 14% medical inflation. And the burden obviously falls on the people because standardized healthcare remains out of reach for many. 23% of Indians rely on loans just to afford treatment. There's debt, stress, and uncertainty. So what do people do? The obvious answer is health insurance. Yet 1 in 10 Indians are dropping out of health insurance. They're not renewing their insurance. Some are even downgrading, only paying half of the full premium, downgrading their policy. To understand why this is happening, let's also look at India's health insurance industry. It's worth over $15 billion. In 2021, it grew at a record rate of over 25%. The health insurance industry grew at 25%. And this happened for 2 reasons. 1, because of the aftershocks of the pandemic, and 2, because there was growing awareness in the middle class. In the financial year ending 2023, it grew at around 20%. But now it's losing momentum. Since the end of the last financial year, the growth has been a little over 10%, which is a 50% drop in 10 months. And it's because of rising health insurance costs. Like I said, medical inflation is high, hospital bills are growing bigger, so insurance companies are pushing for bigger covers. In 2022, a standard insurance cover was worth 3 lakh rupees. Now it is up to 5 lakh rupees. Add special premiums and you have to pay quite a lot. A lot of people say they cannot afford this anymore. So they're either dropping out or downgrading. Last year, health insurance premiums rose by 20%, but the number of new policy holders increased by only 5%. It shows you the affordability crisis. It has left many families in a limbo. The rich opt for expensive corporate insurance plans. The poor rely on government schemes, which leaves the vast middle class in between. They are too rich to qualify for state-run programs and too poor to afford robust private coverage. This middle class is one hospitalization away from debt. What's worse is that our population is aging. Yes, we have a massive youth population at the moment, but this equation is going to change over the years. In 2022, 10% of our population was above 60 years of age. By 2050, that will be more than 20%. So we'll have more old people. These people will need health care. So India will have to prepare for that scenario. How do we do that? Well, the first step is government intervention. And thankfully, it's already happening. India has approved a 5 lakh rupee health insurance coverage for all senior citizens aged 70 and above. This move alone benefits 60 million people. It should make healthcare affordable for the elderly. The second thing to do is getting more people insured. Now, one report suggests that 73% people lack health coverage in India, although the government says this number is only 30%. But even then, even at 30%, it amounts to 400 million people. They must get some financial protection. The third thing to do is making the process easier. 43% insurance holders say their claims were either rejected or partially approved. Some even had to spend an extra day in hospital. On the other side, insurance companies face all sorts of discrepancies, from lack of full disclosure to ambiguity in contracts. So there is a need for transparency, and the government is said to be looking into it. The last step is to lower the tax on insurance premiums. There's an 18% GST on health insurance, that's goods and services tax, 18% GST on your insurance premium. The demand is to lower it to 5%. The government is reportedly considering this, but no decision has been taken yet. So right now, India is at a crossroads in its healthcare journey. The industry is growing, but so are the costs. What we need is for healthcare to become a right, not a privilege. It is World Wildlife Day, so let's talk about the king of the jungle, or one of the kings rather, the Asiatic lion. This mighty lion is endangered and its population has only one home, which is India's Gir forest. Thanks to dedicated conservation efforts, the Asiatic lion population has grown over the past few years and now it has received another boost. India has invested about $35 million, which is more than 2,900 crore rupees, in Project Lion. What does this mean for the species and where do global conservation efforts stand? Here's a report.
This is the mighty Asiatic lion. You may know that this big cat is endangered thanks to the usual threats of poaching and habitat loss. But it has witnessed a remarkable recovery from the brink of extinction from single-digit numbers in the 1900s to a thriving population of hundreds. This is thanks to the dedicated conservation efforts in the Gir forest of the western Indian state of Gujarat. This forest is the last remaining habitat of the Asiatic lion, and this is where Prime Minister Narendra Modi was today. He visited the national park and dabbled in wildlife photography. But why today? Well, because it's World Wildlife Day. This day is meant to celebrate our rich biodiversity and remind people of the urgent need to step up to fight against the human-induced reduction of various species and to boost conservation efforts. The world over, $143 billion are invested in biodiversity conservation annually. This may sound like enough, but it falls short of the investment required, which stands at $824 billion. So this year, the United Nations is celebrating World Wildlife Day under the theme of wildlife conservation finance. And aligning with this vision, India has made an important announcement. The most populous nation wants to boost the protection of its Asiatic lions. This investment will focus on 4 principles: surveillance, response, prevention and preparedness, with technology-driven conservation, proper habitat management, increase in habitat allocation, training for wildlife officials, lion healthcare and conflict mitigation. After all, the Asiatic lion population has seen a boost, especially over the past few years, from 523 in 2015 to 674 in 2020. But this population survives on a tiny patch of forest. So one disease epidemic or a forest fire, any single disaster could wipe out much of the population. Plus, there's loss of land due to growing human and industry presence. And this has increased human-animal conflict. These days, it's much more common to see lions roaming the streets of nearby villages, dying from electrocution at agricultural fields and preying on livestock. In fact, incidents of lions killing domestic animals in Gir have increased over the years. They reached a peak of 4,385 last year, according to government data. So Project Lion wants to tackle these pain points. Hopefully, this new boost in investment will push it towards this goal and advance the conservation of Asiatic lions in India.
It is almost that time of the year again when everywhere you look, you will find cheesy inspirational messages, discounts on makeup products and celebrity posts endorsing self-care because it is almost March 8th. The International Women's Day. That's when the world wakes up and chooses to celebrate women. After all, there is progress. Women are better educated. They make up a bigger chunk of the workforce. They are present in every parliament. They're achieving milestones on Earth and in outer space. So on Women's Day, there are slogan-centric programs, #dependent campaigns and panel discussions constrained within fancy conference halls. But if people were serious about this day, if governments were interested in bringing change, they would take a good hard look at the real world. Because Women's Day is not just about celebration, it is also about shame and remorse. It highlights the erosion of women's rights and the loss of promises. Almost every country has agreed to achieve gender equality, but so far, no country has met the promise, not a single one. So ahead of Women's Day this year, here is a radical idea for policymakers. Why not go beyond tokenism and focus on real change? Let's start with a basic policy prescription. Dose number 1. If you cannot manage to fuel progress, at the very least, do not regress. Looking at you, America, with the deeply problematic return of abortion rights, and Afghanistan, where women and girls cannot work, cannot attend school, or even be heard in public. But if your country is not as bad, don't just offer women flowers on March 8th. Give them safety on the streets, at work, at home. And that's tip number 2, because this is how many women face physical or sexual violence at least once in their lifetime. That's 1 in every 3 women the world over. Now, tip number 3 for policymakers, don't just hold debates on menstrual leave. Fight period poverty, reform gender-blind policies, and address the so-called pink tax, because this is how many women still lack access to menstrual products. Tip number 4. While Women's Day discounts on dolls are cute, try to do this. Fight child marriage. Because this is how many women and girls alive today have been married before their 18th birthday. Tip number 5. Don't just focus on wellness campaigns for women. Improve their health. Because women may live longer than men, but they spend more of their lives in poor health. And the health gap equates to this many years of life lost the world over. Now, policy tip number 6. Address the gender gap in workforce. Women are paid less than men. The gender pay gap stands at 20%, meaning for every $10 a man makes, a woman is paid $8 for the very same work. Plus, more women may be climbing the ladder, but they still own less than a fifth of the businesses. They hold less than 1/4 of senior corporate roles, and this is the average. In the US, female CEOs run only 10% of the top 500 companies, and in India, only 5%. If this looks bad, know that there are countries with 0 female CEOs in top companies. And once you're past this morbid information overload, do remember, accelerating progress on women's rights requires more women in positions of power, more women in policy making, because this is the reality. Women lead only 1/7 of the countries, and they finally got a seat in every parliament just about 2 years ago. So policymakers can talk about progress. Their sentiments of equality can come alive on March 8th. But data shows that they are mostly just playing lip service. Superficial conversations or single-day handouts to women only dumb down this important day. A day when policymakers should be backing calls of action, when people should be demanding better from their leaders, when political, economic, and social equality for women should take center stage. Because women don't need flowers or feminist slogans or discounted kitchen gadgets. They want to stop being treated like second-class citizens. Imagine a comedian and a reality star in one room. Sounds like a fun room, right? Now imagine that room is the Oval Office in the White House and their conversation is on the Ukraine war. Double the fun, isn't it? That's exactly what happened on Friday. Zelensky unleashed his stock speech on freedoms and Donald Trump unleashed his attack dog, J.D. Vance. Forget movies and TV shows. This was total popcorn stuff. Once the dust settled, the internet couldn't stop talking about it. Take a look at this.
With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards.
प्रॉब्लम तुम्हारी है, पैसों की जरूरत तुम्हें है, दस्तखत तुम्हें चाहिए। रिक्वेस्ट करो, प्लीज बोलो, विनती करो मेरी।
And now it's time for Vantage shots. Images that tell the story. Hundreds protest outside a Vermont ski resort where US Vice President J.D. Vance is holidaying with his family. Carnival floats in Germany mock Trump and Putin, and Canadians boo the US national anthem at a WWE match in the country. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1945, Finland declared war on Germany. In the last days of the Second World War, Finland had initially allied with Hitler to retake their land occupied by the Soviets. But as the tide turned, Helsinki switched sides. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Namaste, Mr. President.
Bharat ke logon ko meri namaste.
How many people generally follow you in interviews?
Typically in a month, we have viewers up to 150 million. That's more than twice the population of France. And in the last 2 years, we had 3 billion viewers. So I say, Laurent, this is your chance to be famous. You're on Firstpost. One word to describe your equation with Prime Minister Modi.
Amitié.
As India and France work together, are you creating a new era of non-alignment in the technology space?
India is a training superpower. 1 million engineers a year, more than all of Europe and the US combined. So we have that partnership. We have a partnership on the environment and the economy. We also have civilian nuclear programs, and that is something we've developed far beyond the France-India relationship. So we want to work together on AI.
And then comes China with its DeepSeek, creating models at a fraction of the cost. Did that innovation take you by surprise? Did that breakthrough make you sit up and think, what did the Chinese do and how?
But what did DeepSeek do? They took everything that was already available from the last AI model, and then they recalibrated it.
So are you going to ban Chinese AI in France?
So we don't have this American approach of banning tech because of where it comes from.